The SEALs had begun their farewells. The canyon offered no mercy. Its walls closed like a vice. Its approaches were mapped by the enemy, and the sky above was riddled with threats that had driven every pilot back. Their last uplink lasted only a breath. "We are holding. If this goes dark, tell our families we did what we could." Inside the distant operations tent, resignation settled in like dust. No one argued. Pilots declined the flight. Reconnaissance birds found nothing. All hope for air support had been written off, except in one steady mind. She sought no endorsement. She waited for no green light. When Elaine Kit, callsign Stormwaller, started the A-10's engines, even mechanics paused to watch. The hangar, usually a current of business, fell silent as the aircraft's growl rose. People knew the moment she committed, the rules of risk shifted. What she intended to do in that canyon would not be a small favor. It would rewrite how a single aircraft could change a battle. 8 seconds of radio had done what maps and reports could not. Bravo 6 to command, pinned. Enemy holds the high ground. Ammunition low. Do not attempt extraction. This is our last stand. Static swallowed the final words. Major Elaine stood near the edge of the tent, arms folded, her flight suit powdered with hangar grit. She stared at the blank green monitor as if sheer focus could coax life back into the feed. The display stayed dark. Captain Mason, the liaison to the SEAL team, leaned forward and voiced the consensus. "That ravine is a kill zone. Not even a drone will thread it." Around the table, analysts tapped at charts. Topography lines cut deep. Wind models flashed warnings. Radar lost fidelity across the canyon. Locals had named it the Devil's Throat, a narrow, shadowed cleft in the Korangal Range that swallowed signals and offered concealment to a well-entrenched foe. Lieutenant Colonel Harrow recommended delay until nightfall and a helicopter insertion under cover of darkness. Everyone in the tent understood what that meant. Too late. Elaine moved toward her jet with the unhurried precision of someone who had learned to make calm decisions inside storms. The A-10 waited like an old guardian, its skin marked by past missions and the grit of many runways. She ran her hand along the surface, cataloging checks in a breathless litany only she could hear. Fuel margin, ordnance weight, approach corridors, turbulence pockets. Her pulse remained even. She carried the gravity of command, not as bravado, but as obligation. Dust rose in sheets as auxiliary power fed the engines. The hangar light softened as the aircraft rolled free. Elaine clipped into the cockpit, sealed the canopy, and let the mechanical thrum become a metronome. Voices in her ear were small and human, compressed pleas, steady reports, the thin courage of men that would not yield. She did not promise miracles. She offered certainty. "Hold fast. I'm en route." The A-10 picked up speed. The runway hummed under metal and resolve. Ground crews watched until the silhouette vanished toward the mountain mouth. From the cockpit, Elaine's view narrowed to the canyon throat, a dark channel between stone walls. In that narrowing, she carried their last message and the fragile hope that duty could still bend fate. From that instant forward, everything would be measured by precise choices and raw courage. Elaine Kit settled into the cockpit with the practiced precision of someone who had spent thousands of hours in machines that demanded both respect and mastery. Her fingers traced the contours of the controls, feeling the cold metal under her gloves. The scent of jet fuel mingled with the warmth of the cockpit. Vibrations hummed beneath her seat as the engines idled, a constant reminder that the smallest miscalculation could become catastrophic. She adjusted her helmet straps, scanning the instruments with unerring focus. Each light, each gauge, each flicker of data told a story, and she read it all effortlessly. A flash of sunlight caught the canopy above, reflecting the burning horizon and fractured battlefield below. She remembered missions that had demanded this same clarity. Once in hostile territory where ground forces were trapped behind enemy lines, she had threaded the needle through artillery fire and debris, extracting every soldier with minimal casualties. Her call sign, Stormwaller, had been earned on days when fear would have frozen lesser pilots. Today, that reputation would be tested again. Her mind ran calculations like clockwork. Anti-aircraft positions, enemy patrol routes, terrain elevation, wind shifts. The canyon's walls were jagged teeth, the enemy entrenched and alert. Elaine did not flinch. Danger was acknowledged, catalogued, and managed. Her courage was not loud or reckless. It was precise. Every decision she made carried weight. Every maneuver had consequence. And she knew that her calm would ripple down to the men below, giving them a sliver of hope in an otherwise desperate situation. The aircraft lurched forward as she executed her first approach, banking sharply to avoid a plume of dust kicked up by distant explosions. Her eyes flicked between the terrain ahead and the displays within the cockpit. Communication crackled through her headset. Brevity and clarity guided her commands. Every order she gave was concise, measured, and designed to keep the soldiers below alive. Empathy drove her decisiveness. She did not act for glory, but for the lives entrusted to her judgment. A sudden flare of smoke from the canyon forced her hand. She executed a tight roll, the A-10 responding like an extension of her body. The wind whistled past the canopy. Debris scraped the fuselage. Her heartbeat remained steady. She allowed herself a brief memory, a convoy ambushed at dawn, stranded allies under fire. She had turned the impossible into survival before. That memory reinforced her confidence, reminding her that skill tempered by patience and observation could achieve what others deemed unattainable. Elaine's gaze swept over the valley as she navigated deeper into the Devil's Throat. Every twist of the canyon, every shadowed ridge demanded her attention. Her mind calculated angles, distances, and timing, constantly balancing risk with necessity. This was more than a flight. It was a test of heroism and precision. She carried the responsibility of lives in her hands and the fate of the mission in her decisions. As the canyon stretched beneath her, the soldiers below, pinning for cover, became more than dots on a map. They were human, real, and dependent on her judgment. Elaine's eyes narrowed and her jaw tightened with determination. She was not simply flying into danger, she was the linchpin of hope. The battlefield was unforgiving, but she was ready. The A-10 lifted off the runway, engines screaming against the wind, tossing dust clouds into the air like a storm chasing its own tail. Turbulence buffeted the aircraft as it climbed, twisting against unpredictable crosswinds that rattled the canopy. Below, the battlefield was a mosaic of chaos. Mortars struck unevenly, sending plumes of earth skyward, while armored enemy units advanced steadily, their tracks carving destruction across the terrain. The SEALs were pinned, crouched behind rubble, radio chatter fraying with desperation. Elaine scanned her instruments, noting the approaching enemy radar signatures. Fast-moving drones zipped overhead, their sensors searching for the first glimpse of her A-10. Sniper fire cracked from concealed positions along jagged ridges. Every second brought a new threat, each more lethal than the last. She adjusted her heading, banking sharply to evade a stray round that struck the fuselage with a deafening ping. Her mind raced in tandem with the aircraft, fuel levels, weapon load, approach angles, extraction timing. Nothing was left to chance. A sudden dust storm erupted from the canyon floor, reducing visibility to almost nothing. Rubble from destroyed bridges shifted below like jagged teeth. Elaine tightened her grip, adjusting throttle and flaps, navigating the treacherous air like a needle threading fabric. The roar of engines drowned out the distant screams and explosions, but she felt every vibration as though it were part of her body. Her senses sharpened. Each gust, each shadow, each sound became data she could act on. Enemy anti-aircraft fire suddenly locked on. Alarms blared. Without hesitation, Elaine pushed the A-10 into a tight roll, the canyon walls a blur past her wings. Her reflexes were instinctive, every maneuver precise. Bullets sliced past the canopy, a relentless reminder of how close failure could be. The soldiers below needed her now more than ever, and she would not allow hesitation to cost lives. Her headset crackled with radio chatter from the SEAL team. Panic threaded through the words, contrasting sharply with Elaine's calm directives. Hold position. Cover the high ridge. Extraction inbound in 2 minutes, she never shouted. She never panicked. Her voice was a lifeline, a tether keeping the team grounded in logic even as chaos enveloped them. Elaine circled the valley, eyes scanning for weaknesses in the enemy line. One approach offered speed, but exposed them to flanking fire. Another offered cover, but risked delay. Each choice carried consequences measured in seconds and lives. She weighed the moral cost against the tactical benefit, her mind a balance of courage and calculation. From the cockpit, she saw the broader battlefield unfold. Enemy reinforcements were moving in from the canyon's mouth, converging on the trapped team. Fuel levels ticked down steadily, the instrument glowing ominously. One SEAL unit remained dangerously exposed, every second increasing the odds of disaster. She had navigated the impossible before, but this was different. The stakes were higher. The canyon demanded perfection, and Elaine knew there would be no margin for error. As the A-10 hovered above the swirling dust and chaos, her gaze locked on the SEALs below. Their lives, the mission, and the impossible odds were all converging into a single moment. The path forward was narrow, the danger immediate, but Elaine's resolve was absolute. Every decision she made now would shape what was about to unfold, and the canyon would not forgive mistakes. Enemy fire struck suddenly, tracing the A-10's path with deadly precision. Bullets pinged off the fuselage. Near misses sent shards of metal and dust scattering through the canyon air. The canopy shivered under the impact, and flames flickered across the aircraft's hull. Elaine's hands were steady, but her mind raced with rapid calculations. Every second counted. Every movement could be her last. She rolled sharply, banking into the canyon wall to evade a hail of rounds. Short bursts of missiles fired from the enemy's hidden positions. Her maneuvers were tight, precise, instinctive. The roar of the engines filled her ears, masking the chaos outside. She watched each display, noted trajectory angles, and adjusted her course, threading through the canyon like a needle. Quick, decisive movements became a rhythm, punctuated by the metallic groan of stressed machinery. Elaine faced a critical decision. She could strike aggressively, risking her life to destroy enemy positions outright. Or she could provide careful, measured support, giving the SEALs cover while keeping the A-10 intact. Her eyes narrowed on the map overlay. Each option carried a cost measured in lives. She hesitated only a fraction of a second, enough to weigh risk against reward. Then, with unwavering determination, she committed. The canyon had claimed pilots before. Today, it would not claim her. Low-altitude strafing runs became a ballet of destruction. Missiles streaked across the valley, hitting armored vehicles with precision. The roar of engines mingled with the smell of burning metal. Dust and smoke swirled around her wings. She banked left to evade a sudden blast that shattered a nearby bridge. The A-10 dipped, rolled, and twisted with controlled violence, using every inch of terrain to shield her from enemy fire. Her heartbeat was steady, her focus absolute. Through her headset she heard the SEALs responding. Hope flickered in their radio chatter. Enemy movement suppressed, one voice reported, trembling but alive. They could advance, even if only slightly, thanks to her cover. That knowledge fueled her resolve, but it did not lessen the danger. Alarms blared inside the cockpit, system warnings for structural stress and overheating. A destroyed vehicle below forced a split-second adjustment. Flames from a mortar strike flared at the edge of the canyon wall. Each obstacle reminded her that perfection was demanded and mercy was absent. She ducked, rolled, and fired again, the aircraft responding as if it were an extension of her own body. Minutes stretched like hours as she carved a path through the chaos. Yet the SEALs were not yet safe. Enemy reinforcements pressed in from the canyon's far end. Her fuel read dangerously low. Ammunition was finite. Every move now carried amplified consequences. Elaine's eyes scanned the horizon, calculating her next strike, balancing speed, precision, and protection. The A-10 dove low again, engines screaming, as another squadron of enemy vehicles appeared on the ridge. The canyon narrowed. The SEAL team remained exposed. Every instinct, every ounce of training, every memory of survival flashed through her mind. A daring final move would be required. The canyon demanded perfection, and Elaine prepared to answer. Elaine's eyes scanned the canyon floor, calculating angles and vulnerabilities in real time. Enemy armored units formed a tight line near the ridge. One weak point shimmered like a thread between shadow and sun. She ran the trajectory in her mind, speed, wind, ordnance timing, all variables aligning in fractions of seconds. Her hands adjusted the throttle, nudged the control stick. The A-10 responded instantly, a precision instrument in her capable grip. She pushed into a steep dive, engines screaming as wind whipped past the canopy, whipping dust and debris into the air. Flak erupted around her, scraping the fuselage with a jarring hiss. Smoke stung her eyes, momentarily clouding vision, but she kept focus. Sharp turns followed, twisting the aircraft between canyon walls, dodging enemy fire that sought to make her presence mortal. Each maneuver was calculated yet instinctive, a ballet of speed, courage, and survival. Her headset crackled with the SEALs' voices, overlapping with explosions and mortar strikes. "Bravo 6, cover our left flank," one shouted. Elaine answered without hesitation. Every risk she took was for them. Each strafing pass, each missile strike, each evasive roll designed to shield the soldiers below. She knowingly exposed herself to concentrated fire to create a path for extraction. Heroism was not spectacle, it was precision under fire, judgment under pressure. The terrain became a weapon in her hands. She used canyon walls to mask her approach, gravity to accelerate dives, and firepower to distract, disrupt, and destroy enemy positions. Vehicles that once threatened the SEALs erupted in controlled explosions. Enemy formations faltered, confusion rippling down the lines as she struck relentlessly yet deliberately. Elaine's pulse was steady despite the chaos. Each sound, the scream of engines, the whistling bullets, the distant mortar explosions, was a signal, not a distraction. Smoke trailed the A-10, flames reflected in the canopy, and the taste of adrenaline was sharp on her tongue. Her fear existed but was harnessed, an energy refined into courage. Her eyes darted from ridge to ridge, reading every shadow, anticipating every threat. A close call nearly claimed her. A shell exploded at the edge of a crumbling bridge, showering the aircraft with debris. She rolled sharply, narrowly avoiding collision. The cockpit shook violently, alarms blared, but she stayed on course. The SEALs' movement below accelerated as the enemy's advance faltered. Their extraction route was opening piece by piece because of her actions. Momentum shifted in the battlefield. Enemy units faltered, their rhythm broken by her unrelenting strikes. Soldiers ran for cover, then sprinted toward safer ground. The canyon, once a trap, became a corridor of salvation. Yet Elaine's mission was not complete. Another ridge blocked the final stretch. One precise maneuver remained, one chance to secure the extraction without risking the aircraft or lives below. Her hands tightened on the controls, breath even, eyes narrowing. Seconds stretched like hours. Every variable converged into one instantaneous action. The final run would demand flawless calculation, unflinching courage, and the unspoken knowledge that her success would be remembered long after the canyon fell silent. The canyon fell silent. Smoke rose in slow spirals, carrying the acrid scent of scorched earth and spent ordnance. The sun broke through the clouds in golden streaks, illuminating the valley that had just been the scene of chaos and near annihilation. Debris settled, dust hung in the air, and for the first time in hours, the battlefield breathed. Elaine Kitt guided the A-10 toward base, engines rumbling with fading intensity. Her hands rested lightly on the controls, though a faint tremor betrayed the adrenaline that still coursed through her veins. The seat beneath her was warm, bearing the imprint of long hours of tension. Her body ached, her mind replayed the canyon, yet her expression remained composed. She exhaled slowly, letting the brief silence soak in, acknowledging both the success and the cost. Below, the SEAL team regrouped. Faces that had moments ago been drawn tight with fear now softened with relief. Voices cracked with gratitude over the radio. "Bravo 6, you saved us. We thought we were done for." Laughter mingled with sighs of exhaustion. Elaine's calm directives, her unwavering presence, had transformed despair into hope. Her reputation as stormhauler was no longer whispered. It had been etched into their memory in real time. The wounded received attention, minor injuries treated, and reports sent to command. Recognition was quiet but profound. Lieutenant Colonel Harrow nodded at her as she stepped from the A-10, respect evident in his posture. No accolades were shouted, no ceremonies imposed. The acknowledgement was in the silent reverence of those who had witnessed impossible odds overcome, in the quiet pride that only those who survive understand. Elaine walked to the edge of the tarmac, looking back toward the canyon. The jagged walls, still shadowed, seemed smaller now, as if the impossible task had shrunk under the weight of her determination. She thought of the soldiers she had protected, the choices made in fractions of seconds, and the narrow margins that had separated survival from catastrophe. Heroism, she realized, was measured not in spectacle, but in responsibility, decisions carried with courage, tempered by consideration for others. The A-10 rested behind her, a steadfast guardian that had become an extension of her will. She ran, a hand along the fuselage, acknowledging the machine as both tool and partner in the legend she had written. Above, the sun climbed higher, casting the aircraft in golden light. Dust swirled faintly around its wings, the quiet aftermath of controlled chaos. The SEAL team gathered near the base perimeter, eyes lifted toward the aircraft and the pilot who had turned despair into salvation. Elaine offered a subtle nod, a shared acknowledgement of survival and duty fulfilled. Every mission would demand courage, but today one pilot had rewritten what was possible. A wide shot captured the A-10 against the vast sky, serene and imposing. The canyon, once a death trap, now seemed almost peaceful. Elaine's gaze lingered on the horizon. There would be more missions, more dangers, more impossible odds. But for this day, for these lives, she had turned legend into reality. The story of Stormhauler would endure, whispered among those who knew that courage, skill, and unwavering resolve could reshape fate itself.